Hi, my friends. This is your Professor Pushayati, and we are doing the last video of Module 3, and we are taking care of the Umayyads today. But so before we proceed, I just wrap up what we said last time. I left you with the Sunni Shi'i sort of split, the political split between the Sunnis and Shiites. You remember that that Ali, after the death of Ali, Muawiyah said that okay, it's you're implicated, and no, after the death of Osman, Muawiyah said Ali took up the caliphate, and Muawiyah said okay, you're implicated. Osman was my cousin, so we're going to. I don't consider your legitimacy, and then there was the first civil war. Remember, and then Muawiyah ruled from 661 after Ali's death to 680. At which point he made Yazid his son, the caliph to him, the successor to himself, and then but the children of Ali at this point said, basically Hussein, right, said no, that is not acceptable. This is like kingship. If anything, I am from the blood of the Prophet. So the second fitna, the second war, the second fitna took place, right? Civil war took place in 680 at the Battle of Karbala, and Hussein was and 72 of his followers were murdered, and that the Battle of Karbala became a very, very important sort of commemoration for the Shi'is, where they commemorate the death of Ali and other the death of Hussein and other members of the Prophet's family, right? And but this ceremonies did not start until the 10th or 11th centuries, right? Let's consider what else, right? But one of the things that I wanted to, that's why I'm going back to the Prophet Muhammad, is the following. One of the things that I wanted you to recall, this is something that you don't get in the narratives of Islamic origins. For some reason, this part of the picture is not depicted in the narratives of origin in the Islamic tradition. And that is the following. This is admitted that Prophet Muhammad marries Khadija when he's 20 years old, and Khadija apparently is 40 years old, like quite senior to him. But this takes place in 595, my friends, right? So, and for the next whatever until 622, when the Prophet takes Prophet who has been born in 570, right? 622 he makes the hijrah, right? So from basically 595 to 622 at the very least, right? Prophet Muhammad is a merchant, right? So 595 to 622, he's a merchant, right? And what does he do? He usually goes after marriage to Khadija. He goes from Mecca to Syria, right? He leads caravans to Syria, back and forth, right? But what you remember, my friends, right, is the Byzantine-Sasanian wars as well. You remember that, so Prophet Muhammad is leading these caravans, right, from 595 to at least 622, right? Going north to Syria, right? This is the Arabian Peninsula, and you know your map and everything right now, right? So he's going up and down to Syria in trade, Prophet Muhammad, and meanwhile the borders, right, by by 602, the Sasanians here, right, they have gone out of what was their uh, territory, right, and they have gone to Syria, right? They have come. I mean, they had Mesopotamia under their control, and then they go and take Syria, this part of land, right? They take Syria. You know by now. When does this happen? When 602, right? 602. So from 602, remember my friends, from 602 to 622, when the Prophet Muhammad is leading his caravans up to Syria, Syria is under the control of the Sasanian government, right? I mean, these were the extent of Byzantine Empire at 600, and this was the extent of the Sasanian Empire at 600. But already at 602, the map changes, right? Sasanians come and take over Syria, right? So for 20 years, when Prophet Muhammad is going north to Syria, what the people in charge in Syria are the Sasanians actually, right? And this has implications for the history, for the later history, and this implication has not been sorted out yet by the academia, by scholarship. I have made some inroads into this, but I'm not going to go into details of that now in my work, right, my friends? Um, so for 20 years, he's going back and forth to Syria, which is under Iranian control. By 614, right, the Iranians are also in Egypt, right? So from 614 to 602 Syria, 614 Egypt. Remember 570 already Yemen, remember? And of course, they have control of the western side of the Persian Gulf at this point as well, right? So what when the Prophet Muhammad is doing all this, right? The Sasanians are all over the place when the Prophet is doing his business. The Sasanians are all over the place, right? Okay, so this is very important fact that you should remember, and it is important that neither scholars no scholarship has dealt with this, right? Though it will have the serious consequences. So the Prophet Muhammad would come on his trips to Damascus, right? And this is the ancient city of Damascus, which of course was under the Byzantine Empire up until 602, right? Under the Byzantine Empire, I mean from 602 onwards, right? So this is the itinerary of the Prophet Muhammad, right? So we talked about this. We talked about the four rightly guided caliphs, right? And the civil wars that took place. We remember the civil wars on the trade, right? That were directed to the trade entrepots, places where there were markets and so on and so forth. And this happened during the and the civil wars happened during this time. So Ali ibn Abi Talib dies at 661, and usually we date the Umayyad dynasty from the time that Muawiyah takes over, right? Takes power, right? And that's 661 when Ali ibn Abi Talib is is murdered by one of the seceders, remember, by one of the Khawarij, right? So the broad chronology, my friends, if we want to go over the broad chronology, this is what Prophet Muhammad 632, a conquest of Arabia. Remember, we talked about this, that the conquest of Arabia already takes place ostensibly during the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad, right? From 624 to 632, and then comes the rightly guided caliphs from 632 to 661, during which time, right, besides the Shi'i Sunni political schism that takes place, another very important event takes place, right? And that is the conquest, right? The Arab conquest begin during the period of rightly guided caliphs, right? And we will talk about it. So here on this map that you see, this part, right, is conquered after Prophet Muhammad, is during Prophet Muhammad's life. But you remember, when Prophet Muhammad dies, the wars of apostasy also take place, right? The wars of apostasy take place, i.e., those people who said, yeah, we had made a deal with Prophet Muhammad is gone, so we are out of the fold now, right? And Abu Bakr came and said, yeah, everybody who believed in Prophet Muhammad only, fine for them. They could leave the fold. But if they believed that Prophet Muhammad was the messenger of God, right, then, you're leaving the folding of God, right? So the rightly guided caliphs sent, as you can see, they sent expeditions to the rightly guided caliphs already, right, my friends? So during the lifetime of Prophet, say, all of this, right, was under Prophet's control. They had made a pact with the Prophet Muhammad. Once he dies, the wars of Ridda starts. I'm sorry, the wars of Ridda or apostasy, apostasy, right? They start, and then the generals are. This is according to the Islamic tradition. Generals are sent in order to put down these apostatized tribes, right? And this, we are told, leads to the conquest, right? And as you see on this map already, this is what the rightly guided caliphs come to have under their control, right? They have conquered all of Persia, right, by now. They have also conquered, right, Egypt by now. From whom have they conquered these, right? And they have conquered Syria, right? And Yemen, and everything. From whom? Well, remember our map, from the Sasanian Empire, originally from the Byzantine, but by the time that the Arabs come, all of this land is under Sasanian control, right? So they take it over from the Sasanians, right? The conquest actually infiltrates into Egypt formerly. So what happens actually, my friends, is that when in 629, the forces in 629, right? The forces of the Sasanians are leaving, right? 629. They're leaving Egypt. They're leaving. They're well, I mean, they're leaving Egypt. They're leaving Syria. They're pulling back. They're going back into the country. Now, what is also happening at this point? There are earthquakes happening. There is plague coming down. There is starvation. There is death all over the place, and so on and so forth. Right? So during the rightly guided caliphs, right, the period of rightly guided caliphs, all of this territory is taken away as the Sasanians are pulling out, right? The Arabs are going into a situation where there is nobody in control, right? So they take over all of this land, right? So this is so that in general, if you want to like generalize about the whole thing, you can say during the period of rightly guided caliphs, three things actually happened. The civil wars happened, right, that lead to the Sunni Shi'i sort of schism. The wars of apostasy happened at the same time, right? And the wars of conquest take over after the wars of apostasy, right? So we are told in all of this that, my friends, we are told that this all of this was actually Islamic conquests, i.e., the population of Arabia, right, they have all, after the wars of apostasy, they have reconverted, right? They have reconverted to apparently to Islam, so that the wars of conquest that ostensibly start from 632 after the death of the Prophet by the rightly guided caliphs, the way that I explained to you. After this happens, all of a sudden, all of Arabia is supposed to have become Muslim, right? And these conquests overnight, right, between 610 to 632, all of Arabia has become Muslim. Some of them have apostatized, but they have become Muslim again, right? And it is these Muslims that go on the conquest with their swords, right? Unshielded, and they murder and they kill. And who constructed this story? 19th century European historians who were writing on, who were just beginning to write about these things, and they had inherited what they had inherited, and we'll get into this. They had inherited the writings of a Christendom, right? Remember, during the Byzantium, all of this is supposed to, I mean, except for Iran, right? But although they say that Iran also became, had a great majority of Christians. So all of this is Christian, right? And these Arabs are going and taking over basically, except for Iran, they're taking over basically Christian lands in which there are major pockets of Jews, right? Except for Inner Arabia, as I said. Even in Arabia, as we have seen, Medina is substantially Jewish, right? As is Yemen, right? A substantial population of Jews in Yemen as well. And of course, some population in Jerusalem, quite a bit in Egypt, quite a bit in Iran, and so on and so forth. And there's a lot. I can teach a whole course to you about this, my friends, right? But okay, I'm not going to, right? So this Christian, the lands are taken over by the Arabs from the Christians, and then there starts, right, this obviously this negative attitude toward Arabs, right? And then they began building the Islamic narrative onto that, yeah, calling them Muslims. So this Christian anti-Muslim sort of scholarship of medieval times, right? Later medieval times, because you know at this point, after this point, Europe has lost all its glimmer after the classical times, after Byzantium, basically, right? I mean, at this point, Byzantium is look, this is Byzantium, but when the Iranians attack, they take over Byzantium, right? And the Arabs try to take over it, but they cannot, right? And the Umayyads try to take it over. The green line is the Umayyads, part of Anatolia. They want to take over and they cannot. Okay, so um, exciting histories, my friends. So remember I told you that the Shi'i Sunni thing takes place during the whole thing. Also, Omar, from among the rightly guided caliphs, has a lot of sort of accolade to his name, right? He starts setting up sort of settlement areas of settlement, right? And we will see one of them is in Basra, which is a very important port city at this point, right? One of them is near Ctesiphon, is Kufa, right? In fact, as you remember, Ali doesn't rule from Medina, but Ali rules from Kufa, and um, the Battle of Karbala, right? It takes place also here, around here, right? Yeah. So okay, so Basra, Kufa, and here Misr. So Misr actually means garrison city. But it came to be known as the name of the whole country. Right now, in the modern world, we call Egypt in Arabic, we call it Misr, right? But Misr, Kufa was a Misr, Basra was a Misr, and so on and so forth. So Omar establishes these garrison cities, and they are established for launching further conquests in Misr, for instance, to North Africa, and Kufa and Basra to Iran, right? And it is during the period of Omar, right, that conquest of Syria, parts of Iran, and Egypt, right, takes place, and these conquests are conquests that ultimately basically transformed the ancient world into something new, and we will talk about it later, right? So what is clear is that for as far as the conquest is are concerned, right? The havoc that was there between the Byzantines and the Sasanians, the wars and the natural disasters that I talked to you about, was the context of the rise of Islam, so to speak. Yeah. As a result of these wars, the trade routes, right? The trade routes are also affected. Remember, this is the trade routes, and Arabs are zigzagging the Arabian Peninsula. The Arabs, the nomadic Arabs, right, are doing that, protecting the merchandise of mercantile Arabs in Mecca, Medina, and in Yemen, and in Hira, and in Palmyra, and Damascus, and Petra, and all of the cities that we talked about, right? The nomads are the go-between of the trade for these cities, major cities and trade centers, right? But these trade has been sort of disrupted, right? The natural disasters have come, and lo and behold, the Arabs actually were an integral part of the Sasanian Byzantine wars here, right? Sasanian Byzantine wars. Of course, in the Sasanian Byzantine wars, the Arabs, right? The Arabs were also included, right? The Arabs of well, the Ghassanids, for instance, were included. The Lakhmids were included, right? We don't know to which extent the Quraysh were included, but that has not been properly addressed by academia yet, my friends. Okay, so there we go. Then okay, all of these were also the context of the great Arab conquests, right? A great Arab conquest. So they take over these parts from, they were originally Byzantine, the Sasanians take over, and then the Arabs come once the Sasanians are pulling out. The Arabs who are part of these wars, right? And these are economic wars, right? They are actually silk wars, because silk was a very important, one of the major commodities of trade. It was like oil it is to today, and silk was to this period of time, right? Very, very expensive. So at the end of so here we can see it very, very well. At the end of the life of the Prophet Muhammad, this part of Arabia is in the fold of Prophet Muhammad, right? And when we get to the Rashidun caliphs already, you see that the Rashidun add quite a bit, right? Quite a bit to the territories. Basically, they take over the Sasanian Empire, right? And they take a good chunk of the Byzantine Empire. They take all of Syria from them, right? The Sinai Peninsula, Egypt, you remember North Africa, all of these areas that were part of the Byzantine Empire, right? Yeah. Anyway, so the Arab conquest takes place, and by 680, Muawiyah is dead. Yazid is taking over, right? Well, let me tell you a little bit about Muawiyah, right? Muawiyah ruled like a king, right? From Damascus, he ruled like a king. And he ruled for 2 decades. And remember, he had trade interests and trade, they were a very powerful family in Mecca, trading with Syria, right? So in Damascus, he basically segregated himself like a king, right? And he was accused by later historians of establishing mulk. This is a U, my friends. Mulk or kingship. And then, Muawiyah made it such that the position of the caliph became hereditary. He moved the center of rule from Medina and Mecca to Damascus. So the Umayyads came to rule from Damascus as opposed to Medina. and of course Damascus also gave Muawiyah control over the Eastern Mediterranean from Damascus, right? So, so then after the period of rightly guided caliphs, if we remember, right, then comes the Umayyad Caliphate, and we include Muawiyah in the Umayyad Caliphate. From 661, therefore, Umayyad Caliphate starts. And you remember we had a chart of the Umayyad Caliphate, right? We remember that they are coming, the clan of Umayyah are also from Quraysh, but they are not from the clan of Hashem. They are a separate clan called Umayyah. So Muawiyah is the first to rule. Remember, we talked about this. Then comes Yazid. Then comes Muawiyah the second. And these green ones that you see, they are all sort of the caliphs of the Umayyad Caliphate. So the Umayyads actually ruled from 661 to where Marwan II is the last caliph, Muawiyah is the first caliph, Marwan II is the last caliph, to 750, right? To 750. During this time, as you remember again, yeah, the Umayyads, a branch of the Umayyads continued into Spain, and 711 they went into Spain, and then they went as far as Tours. But I think I made a mistake last time. I said at the Battle of Tours. It was at the Battle of Toulouse, right, that the Muslims were defeated, and therefore they could not take over France, but they took over Spain, and they had, until 1200, and so they might have been confined to here, but they continued to live in the southern part, right? They continued to rule in this enclave, right, of Cordoba, actually, in Cordoba until like the 1200s and whatnot. This is part of the castle, this one, part of the castle of Muawiyah that has remained. And here, my friends, here, for instance, here you see the mosque of Cordoba that was created by the Umayyads of Cordoba. This is another mosque in Damascus, and this is yet another mosque in Damascus. And all of these, besides many, many more architectural relics and sort of commercial luxury goods, right, are coming from the Umayyad period. So, so what the Umayyads did, my friends, the Umayyads also continued the conquest, therefore, right? So this is Prophet Muhammad. You see the yellow is Abu Bakr, right? The conquest of Umar are this, right? Remember, Umar is very well thought of, right? Conquest of Osman is basically the Caucasus, remember? Caucasus. This is this mountainous area between the Caspian Sea, remember, my friends? Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. Right? So Osman conquers there, and then comes Muawiyah, right? And you see that Muawiyah conquers southwestern Iran, as well as as well as what is Tripoli, right, Tunisia, right, and then one of the other very important Umayyad caliphs, Abd al-Malik. He is a very important caliph. Okay, he is um, okay. He is Abdul Malik here, which is, so the Umayyads are divided into, or themselves are eh, divided into two groups, right? The Sufyanid branch, but just I don't need you to know this one, and the Marwanid branch. This is just for your curiosity. Marwanid and uh, Sufyanid, right? So Abdul Malik is this very, very important second caliph in the Marwanid, after in the Marwanid cycle, so to speak, right? So, okay, so that was the conquest of Abdul Malik. You see here this little part. He's not very famous for his conquests, I guess, right? Then another Umayyad Caliph, right? We go into, this is Afghanistan, my friends, right? And parts of Pakistan, right? And we know that Istan means the land of. So Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, right? Land of the Afghans, land of the Tajiks, land of the well, the Pakis, right? And so on and so forth. Um, anyway, so Walid comes and sort of conquers this part in Central Asia and whatnot, and as well as what is called Maghreb, i.e., the West, right? The West, that is Morocco. Okay, let me double check whether I have my Morocco correct. Oh, it is 1 R only, my friends. I'm sorry. 1 R only. So it will be okay. It will be Morocco. 1 R. Okay. And then finally, other conquests of other other sort of caliphs. I guess this would be the conquest of maybe the conquest of Oman. Doesn't matter. But at any rate, you see, each caliph comes and adds to the lands conquered by the Umayyads. So what did the Umayyads actually do? What was their achievements, right? They created the conditions, the Umayyads, in which later on the so-called Islamic civilization. And I told you before, I tell you again, I am not, I do not sit well with this concept of Islamic civilization. But it is a Western Asian civilization, but it goes into North Africa. So it is, on if you stretch it really, you can say that it is Islamic civilization. But I'll tell you why I don't think it is. Why that is not a good nomenclature for it later on. But so they expanded to North Africa, Spain, Transaxiana, right, and they created conditions of in which the Islamic civilization was going to be working, right? So in general, they set up a workable state. Your book, by the way, your book is very, very conservative. I told you about this. It's an old work, right? It portrays the conquest as Islamic conquest. So I might ask you, for instance, what does Saunders says about the conquest? Were they Islamic or were they Arab, right? And what do you think? You know, that kind of a thing. Okay, so Umayyads, then they recruited an army from the sedentary populations of Syria and planted them in Waset, which is in Mesopotamia, right? Um, Halfway between, this is Basra, say, this is Kufa, say, and this is Waset, halfway between. Between they they had a stationary army created, right? And then early caliphs with like Muawiyah were glorified sheikhs, right? They are they from being Arab chieftains, right? They come and become they adopt the ways of the emperors of the Byzantines and the Persians. So under Muawiyah, also before we proceed, my friends, the on the Iranian coinage, which is called dirham, right? This is the monetary, and a lot of countries still call their currency dirham, right? Anyway, Muawiyah, it is the first one to use, right, and sort of quote unquote Islamic epithet, I mean Islamic phrase on the coinage, right? And that is bis Allah in Arabic. I'm sorry, bis. You see, be. Those of you who, this is be, sin, mim in Arabic, alef, lam, alef, lam, he, Allah, right? Bismillah, Bismillah, Bismillah means be in the isme, the name of God, in the name of God, right? But they have argued that okay, Elaha was their God, and then they just put an al, definitive al, and the, right, and they made it the God, right? So and yeah. Um, Okay, and here you see that in the left hand side here, it says in the Persian language, which is right in Middle Persian, which is this language before modern Persian, which is an Indo-European language. Remember, right? So it says in Muawiyah, Amir Vershinshin, right? The commander of the faithful, right? Muawiyah, the commander of the faithful, right? And otherwise all of the rest is maintained stars and the king, his jewelry and whatnot. And this is the fire temple, and these are the two mubads, i.e. Zoroastrian clergy, right, who are attending the fire, we're going to have a session on Zoroastrianism. I promise you. Okay. So in other words, this is and this is in well, we don't know. It's 674, 675, right? In other words, it's half a century after the Prophet Muhammad, right? Almost half a century where we have Bismillah minted on this coin, and it is a coin of a region in Iran, which is and he's called the Amir, not the Caliph. All of which has created questions for the um, for the for the academics, right? Um, uh, this is a Greek inscription that credits Moawiye for restoring the bath facilities, right, in 663, right? This is the sole epigraphic attestation. Epigraphic meaning writing in on the stone, right? Epigraphic, right? So, of course, the administration of the countries, I mean, you have taken over two empires, right? The Sasanian Empire with its capital at Ctesiphon. Um, okay. Oh, sorry. Ctesiphon, right, with its capital at Ctesiphon, and Syria with Damascus, right, the Byzantine territory of Syria with Damascus as its capital. Of course, you're taking over the apparatus of highly sophisticated sort of cultural regions, and of course you're not going to destroy the administration of these territories, right? And you are basically taking over the War Office, the tax office, private seal, secretariat, and post office. While Saunders, for instance, tells you that they created these. Well, that they might have suited them to their own purposes, but they did not create these. Okay, so this is another example of an Umayyad palace, right? So once we come to Abdul Malik, I remember I told you it's a very, very important caliph, right? Ruling 685 to 705, right? The scribes, right, continued in these two territories as before, because you're dealing with two important civilizations wherein sciences are highly developed, wherein, they have done their works, right? They have inherited so much from the ancient Western Asian civilization, right? And by the time it gets to the Sasanian and the Byzantines, they are really rich in all cultural dimensions, from sciences to arts to architecture to shipping, and you name it, right? We're dealing with two major civilizations here, right? Now, so Abdul Malik comes and he does two important things, right? First of all, he makes Arabic the official language of the empire. This is a major, major change, right? And as a result of it, all the work that was done in Middle Persian, right? All the work that was done in a lot of the works that were done, these remained in their original languages, right? Middle Persian and Greek, right, and Latin and whatnot during the Umayyad period, right? So there is all this knowledge in and right, and Christians and all of that, right? So 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 he makes it Arabic. He makes the language of the ministry Arabic. All his ministry is Arabic, and he issues, right, Muslim coinage, thoroughly Muslim coinage, where there is no sign of well, this is an exaggeration because some coinage continues to be that way, but the Sasanian coinage, for instance, is gradually goes out of circulation and so forth and so forth. Not for a long while, but okay, gradually this happens, right? By now the generation of the companions, by time of Abdul Malik, right, the generation of the companions of the Prophet have passed away, right? So all the lore of the Prophet, everything about the Prophet, is only which was only known by himself and his companions. That has been what has happened to that. The Islamic tradition says that that has been handed down to the companions of the companions, right? So this newer generation of Muslims become more zealous, we are told, as opposed to the previous generation, right? How can we deduce that? I don't know. But there is this concept created, right, of the people of the book, right? People of the book, i.e., Ahle Kitab. Kitab means book, Ahle means people of the book, and these included Judeo-Christians and ultimately the Zoroastrians of Iran, right? They respected these, they accepted these, right? But they had to, if they did not convert, they had to pay a taxation, which was basically the same taxation that they had to pay before as individual taxpayers, right? Churches continued to be built even in Muslim regions, right? They did not encourage conversion because once you became convert, then you didn't have to pay the taxes, right? The kharaj. Taxes that are built by the people of the book, right? And during this period, another important event takes place, and that is the creation of a of well, so they do not. I mean, this is important. They do not encourage conversion because those who paid the poll tax or the jizya stopped pay ostensibly were supposed to stop paying it once they converted to Islam, supposedly. So we will deal with that later on. Another thing that happened, and this is the last that I will be talking about, is the systematization of the sacred law, right? That takes place over also in during the rule of the um, of the um, of the Umayyads, but into the Abbasids, right? 4 schools or mazhabs, right? And these mazhabs, right, they declare, different, believe different things about, for instance, rituals, right? You should pray, when you're praying, you should stand this way. No, you should stand this way. And, disagreements over minutiae of the sacred law or the Sharia, right, which its basis, remember, was the Quran, right, and the traditions of the Prophet, and reasoning by analogy, and ultimately the consensus of the learned man of the community, right? That's about it, my friends. And events take place that lead to a revolution at the end of the Umayyad period, and that is 750, and the revolution is called the Abbasid revolution, because these are not the Umayyads, they are not the Alids, right, but they are the Abbasids, who are also from the clan of Hashem, right, who argued that the Alids gave their legitimacy to the Abbasids, transferred their legitimacy to the Abbasids. And this is the stuff for our module 4, my friends. I hope you liked the lectures for this module, and I'll talk to you I will see you again in the next module, and I wish you the best of luck in your forthcoming quizzes in module 2, right? Tada, my friends. Have a nice day. Have nice days and nights until I talk to you again. Okay, bye.